Good evening, good evening. My name is Claudia Morales with the Music Division, and I'm so happy to be in conversation with wonderful artists. Can we please give it another round of applause? Reginald Mobley, Brandon Aker, and Doug Balliet. So let's begin this conversation with the program itself. Reggie, you covered music from the 1800s all the way to 2025, going through different composers. Can you please talk about the song selection and the goal of the program?
Well, the goal of the program, it's changed many times, it's gone through different iterations, but the one thing stayed the same is that we wanted to focus on the connection between people and intimacy and all of our connection between just the ability to pause and take a moment and breathe and enjoy just solitude and quiet together. I've been wanting to do a lute song for quite some time, disc for quite some time, and I've known Brandon for a bit, and of course he was the first call. And so we decided on having this together. Originally it was going to be more Dowland, but as things moved on, I realized that we needed just a little bit more. I think I love the power of three. And so Doug was the natural choice because I just wanted much more from him. I know what he can do, and also he's an incredible composer. I mean, his songs, particularly Sam, was the one that sat on repeat for me for quite some time. But the idea was to create a program that really kind of focused on various points of English song, so with Dowland and Purcell, and then the collection of Samuel Pepys, the famous diarist, who had a huge collection of music. We thought we would focus on that, but I wanted to also include us in that, to not just have an American boy do another, lute song disc. I wanted to focus on us as well, and so including a few pieces written by our friend Crystal, and also the work of Justin Holland, the incredible 19th century Black American composer. I thought that same spirit existed here, that existed there, and we hoped that maybe it would create a cohesive narrative or a cohesive program, and it really did come together beautifully and pretty quickly as well.
Speaking of composers, earlier in the afternoon, you and Brenda had a chance to see a display with some collection materials from the library. What did you see and what caught your eye the most?
Well, I mean, my eyes were immediately drawn to Bach. That's always a problem. I have a hard time looking outside of that, but you pulled some incredible things. Really, there was a piece of Purcell. There was "O Solitude" was actually one of the pieces that you pulled, and it was so amazing looking through this piece and Brandon noticing that some of the words were completely different from what we'd known before. Crossed out. So that was really interesting, and it was also really nice to see some of the printings and pieces of Justin Holland as well. Just to have that in the same space as us as we perform their music later was just. It felt really connective for me, and I think for us. It was really wonderful.
What about you, Brandon?
For me, seeing the O Solitude manuscript was really a nice surprise. And just to add on to what he was saying, what's so great about looking at a manuscript is not only seeing the penmanship of these composers who we idolize and almost deify. It's almost like hard to believe that they were a real person sometimes. And then you're looking at their handwriting, and you can clearly see, he says, "and Apollo's will." And he goes, "That's no good." And he scratches out "will," and he writes "love." Apollo's love. And so that type of thing makes the composition so much more real and feeling more modern. So that was my favorite, but I also got to see some really amazing old lute books, which is, of course, what I wanted to see. It's just incredible. The collection is amazing. Thank you for that.
Going back to the program, Doug, can you talk about your two pieces and how do you work through the heaviness of the poems into the music?
Thank you, and thank you for welcoming us. We love playing this program, and Reggie has a vision and also a very gentle way of nudging his composers towards what he wants, but also gives you total freedom. And he said there's going to be some personal, so maybe that could inspire you, let ground basses inspire you. And also, just look at this poetry by Crystal. He never said you must set it or please set these texts, but just look at it. And he talked to me and our friend Jonathan, who is a totally awesome composer, and wrote that middle one. So we responded to that Purcell prompt in different ways. Jonathan made it really sound like Purcell and gave it like the narrative sweep, because he was moving through scenes and changing keys with the positive memories D major, oh, things take a turn, and it was extremely thoughtfully done. That might be my favorite song on the disc myself. I did two different things. I did compose something what's called a shepherd's tone, which always cadences in a different place from where it started, and it like goes in an infinite circle, and I thought that would be appropriate for these waves crashing in the shipwreck scene. And Sam is just a descending chromatic scale, very slowly over the course of the whole thing, which is a trick that I think Purcell would have really approved of, and that way. But that's the architecture, and then you can paint words on top of that with the harmonies. So those were my entry points. Great question, thank you very much.
Reggie, can you please talk about your vocal techniques, how that differs from music from the Baroque to other music styles?
Not much changes. I mean, it's still the same person, it's still the same voice. The way I pronounce the text does, of course, change a bit to be slightly more colloquial and appropriate for the time and for the period and the composer. But really, I try to use not necessarily extended techniques, but various colors to really dig at the heart of what's important, which is the text, the poetry. I mean, despite Purcell and Holland living in different times and different places, the music that is set, the music that's created, still goes towards a story, it goes towards a feeling, it goes towards a mood. And how best can I use this little instrument to set a space and create a picture of what those words, of what those phrases might mean and what they might say. I honestly, the way I use my voice, not just in more modern classical, but also in Baroque music, I use it by taking notes from who I consider the best teacher for Baroque singing, which is Ella Fitzgerald and Sarah Vaughan. There is such a strong, I feel there's a strong connection that can be learned for singers from listening to jazz musicians, because they're not careful, they're not protective and delicate with their voices and keeping a consistent spin and just singing everything as long as the voice stays the same and beautiful. But instead, it focuses on the fact that the words must mean something, making cold sound cold, making warm sound warm, and being expressive, being Madrigalian and onomatopoeic with this music. And that's what I took from these singers and try to do, honestly, with no matter what I do, whether it be Purcell, or Bach, or Handel, or Britten, or even Doug's music, I always try to focus on what's the most important thing. And that's the music, that's the text, that's the very thing that we bring to share with each other.
Brandon, talking about technique, how do you adjust your technique, your playing, to accommodate Reggie's tonality in his voice?
Well, I should say I adore playing with countertenors. There's this magical combination between lute and countertenor. I think for me what it is there's this angelic, sensitive, gentle quality to a voice like Reggie's. And lutes are famously not loud, you know? And so what I get to do is, instead of playing super loud, try to keep up with this kind of big operatic voice, I can do the most subtle things. And sometimes you'll hear Reggie almost even just speaks a word just to get that text to be the most important thing. And so I find that I can do more sensitive things when I play with Reggie, for example.
What about you, Doug?
First, I'd love to just double what Reggie was saying. Almost all Baroque music, like Bach, it was sort of, think about church music today. In any church tradition, the way the chorus understands the words they're singing and they're singing it like they mean it. That was true of every music at every time. So I agree, like historical performance is sort of just playing the music and playing it well and giving it meaning at every note. And I was sitting here during the concert and just feeling lucky and going, wow, Brandon and Reggie at Library of Congress, I'm playing viola da gamba. This is crazy. I love it. Great life. So, I mean, when you work with people who also think deeply that every harmony means something, you know, like when Bach writes B major, you pay attention, wow, B major. And all three of us are reacting the same way to that B major, and that's important. I feel it.
Reggie, earlier, while we were looking at the materials, you were sharing some stories about your connection with Justin Holland. Can you share with the audience what it is?
Well, Justin Holland is one of those many composers that have been kind of forgotten or left out of the canon, and I think that they, among many other composers, honestly most composers, are necessary and should be included. They should be known because their stories are incredible and their music and what they do is incredible. Justin Holland was, unlike, I focus right now currently heavily on the work of Ignatius Sancho, who was a British composer who was born on a slave ship and was taken to England where he lived as a slave to three sisters in London, and eventually earned his freedom and became one of the first black people to vote in parliamentary elections in England. He's an incredible story. If you don't know him, you should know him. Google him later. Google him now. But know that, you know, Charles Ignatius Sancho. But on the other side, later, we have Justin Holland, who's in the 19th century. He actually wasn't born into slavery. He was born to free sharecroppers in Virginia. His parents died when he was young, and he fled to Boston, where he eventually met a guitarist who he just fell in love with the guitar, followed him to Mexico, where he learned the guitar method. He ended up in Cleveland, where he raised a family and just became an avid writer of many, many things for guitar, methods and just pieces including arrangements of grand opera, like Verdi and Rossini, things like that. He was an incredible person, and he was very adjacent to the abolitionist and anti-slavery movement as well. He was kind of in the further orbit, but I think of him and a few other black composers of that time who kind of orbited the world that was Frederick Douglass and William Lloyd Garrison. And it was just important to me what best to accompany these incredible songs of resilience and self-liberation, you know, of Crystal's haiku, than the music, the settings of music by someone who lived at that time and had a complete, beautiful, you know, view of what life was like and what life could be like. So it was important to include him and in the program with him. And you can tell that the music that he arranged, the three songs that we presented this evening, are actually written by other composers, but he was always absorbing and outputting things for guitar or for guitar and voice. And in a way, he was kind of like the hit parade of that time. He was the Billboard charts. Everything that he took in were things that he thought or saw as were popular. So this is kind of a window into also what was popular at that time. So it was just really important to include Justin Holland, and I would love if you went away and also searched him and his music as well and learned more about him.
We had some questions from the audience that I would like to ask. This one is for you, Doug. Somebody wants to know about your viola da gamba. Who is it and what year is from?
This viola da gamba is designed in Michigan, executed in China. It is a very fine instrument that was made in 2001. Yeah, very new. And these instruments are well known in the viola da gamba community. And I've been breaking mine in for a couple of years and really teaching it to do what I want. And recently a friend of mine said to me, "That's not one of those viols, is it? It sounds nothing like one." And I said, "Thank you. That's the greatest, best compliment."
Here's another question. I am a countertenor who studied with Drum Inter many decades ago. Back then, a concert with a countertenor voice was a rarity, and it had to be accompanied by a lot of education to the listening audience. Do you find that you still have to educate today's audience?
No. They ask questions when they do, and you get some whoppers for sure. I'll tell a short story and then answer the question. I'm originally from Gainesville, Florida. I'm a Southern boy, even though I live in Boston. And I was at the University of Florida. And it was there, my professor, when I became a countertenor, he used me for a lecture that he did for the humanities section, humanities department. And he talked and extolled about castrati, and talked about castrati and what they did and what they were. And he just said, and they lived their lives as rock stars, even though they were incomplete. And now Reggie's going to sing. And so I sheepishly walked out to several hundred students at Florida staring below my eyes. From that point forward, I thought it was important to maybe let people know that much, that things are different. I'm definitely factory settings, but what's important is that I don't think that it's really all that necessary to have to force an explanation on you as though you really need one. I mean, that's not what's important. It's the music that's important. I mean, no one would bat an eye going to see, the Bee Gees or Michael Jackson or Prince sing, and Prince sings an octave higher than I do. We don't think about those things. And this music from these periods, it's just popular music of the time. It's important music from that time. And what I do really isn't that different. It's just in a different setting that people aren't necessarily used to. But the thing that's important is that, yes, I can answer questions about what the countertenor is, but the most important question is, did you enjoy it? Like, how did you feel? Like, I don't care about, talking about my instrument or really kind of extolling from that. What I care about is what you got from this. I don't care if you remember our faces, our names. What's important is that you remember this music and maybe the way it made you feel. That's what's important. So I think if you don't patronize an audience or try and hedge bets and treating them as though they may not know better, but just presenting honest music, presenting yourself in an honest way, often no one cares, they just enjoy what's there. So I think that's the best way to go forward. Just be bold and just do it, wherever you are, whoever you are.
This is a question from Nathan, who is 11 years old. He says, we heard you like video games. What's your favorite game to play, and what's your favorite video game music?
Well, I think we have someone here who's played on video games, but me personally, I'm going old school. I just started playing Dragon Quest for the first time because I've never played them. But normally, 20 years ago, so before you were born, Nathan, twice before you were born, Nathan, I used to live in Tokyo. I lived in Japan. And while I was there, I discovered One Piece, the manga and anime. And I have been a hardcore One Piece fan since then. And so every possible One Piece game there is, not just on platforms, also on my phone that I was playing in the dressing room before this, I'm a big fan of anything One Piece, and music as well. The music from the show is also incredible, and the games as well.
Speaking of video game music, Brandon, some of your music is also featured in some video games.
Yeah, that's one of the fun things about, I do a lot on YouTube. I have a lot of YouTube videos explaining these instruments, performances with people like Reggie, and when you have a lot of content online, you get some funny requests from time to time, and some of them good, some of them bad. But one day I got a request from Civilization, the game, which is a very big deal, and so I played on Civilization 6, 7, Total Warhammer 3, and some others. And they just say, okay, here are the tracks. Can you play theorbo guitar? Here's this track is Mexican music. This track is supposed to be Spartan music. And I just, remotely record my parts and send it to them. So it's a really fun really fun thing, and then I get to play the game and be like, oh, I remember that part.
So if you brought your copy of Civilization, he can sign it.
And we're going to close tonight with this last question. And maybe each one of you can pitch in. Do you or any of you see a place for AI in the creation of music? I am thinking of Miles Davis and his initial rejection of synthesizers.
I use AI a lot, and I found I can do a lot with it. I don't use it to actually compose music, but I actually found that when I'm looking for a title for a song, I recently formed a new music group, and I was looking for a title for the group, and so I said, these are the instruments, I want it to sound sophisticated, but not too formal. I want it to sound like this and have tones of like 17th century music, and then it spits out a bunch of examples, and I say, give me 10 more like number 7. And I found that actually it can point me in certain ways, but actually composing music, I think, is a scary thing for most of us.
The reason this album exists is kind of an opening salvo in the war against AI. I don't think it necessarily has a place in what we do. I think there's a lot that's being lost in the mash. I think we can't forget the most important thing about it, who AI is supposed to serve, who we're supposed to be paying attention to. It really has to come back to people. It really has to come back to us. Yes, we'll make mistakes and we'll do stupid things, but I want to focus on the individuality of every person, the creativity that comes to the person. There's music that people have created that will, of course, be lost. There are things that may or may not happen, but I don't know, I'm really the biggest fan of us. And I think that there's something in art, in someone who studies for years and hones their craft that just elevates music and art beyond, and not just music itself, but also visual arts, especially visual arts. I think there's something that's lost if we just focus on machines trying to take the place of what we have and what's important. I think that maybe we should slow down and actually focus on making sure that this thing that kind of brings us together, the music and art being kind of the backstop of humanity, of keeping us kind of solid, should not be touched just yet. I think there's some things that should still be us for now, before we lose it, and honestly devalue it because of that. And I don't want that at all.
What do you think, Doug? What is your opinion?
I gotta follow that. Well, I think the synth comparison is excellent because AI will help us. For example, what it does is it lowers the learning curve for things like Max, say a program to help you make new synth patches. I have friends that are saying, I dreamed up apps and I was always a terrible coder. Now with AI, I'm making those apps. And AI is here to stay, and there are going to be AI movies, and we all have to be very vigilant. Jobs will be lost, and I'm thinking about the composers who write the music you hear when you're on hold on the phone. When I'm listening to that music now, I'm saying, I think AI wrote this hold music. But AI has to learn from something, and it learns from the people that are doing the things at the forefront of the art. And that's what we're doing, like we're being human beings. And in that way, our jobs aren't in any sort of danger at all, because there'll always be place for humans. Right?
Please give them a big round of applause. Thank you so much.